Have you ever considered the effect that fear can have on us? Now, the thing is that for many of us, we make decisions mostly based on the emotions we are feeling. And that's kind of an important thing to think of is that how often do we make decisions particularly based on the fear of something happening? And how oftentimes is it because we don't really know what's actually going on? And that kind of ties into a story item in that, or at least a way of telling stories, particularly horror or thrillers, in that a threat is scarier when you don't really know what it is. Like you may be seeing glimpses of it, but you don't actually know what it is, so your brain is filling in, or at least attempting to fill in the blanks, and sometimes it can't, so it's even scarier. Or like you're seeing the aftermath of it going through some place, but you don't actually know where it is right now. It could be just around the corner, or it could be on the other side of the complex, but you don't know where it is, and you don't know what it is, and you may actually not know what its intentions are towards you. Of course, this can often be that who's actually the imposter or whatever. That's like, okay, someone's not a traitor or whatever, but it's like we don't know who it is, so everybody's now tense. So there's that tension raising when the unknown is in play. And that's just something to be aware of with storytelling, how effective that is. But it's also pretty effective in real life. And that's partially due to false evidence appearing real. Again, our imagination will attempt to fill in the blanks. So if we see a piece of evidence, we might think, oh, it adds up to this, this, and this, but it's actually not really what's going on. And again, it may come down to our mind and where our emotions already are and how easily we fall for it. And that sometimes we may think things turn out for the better, but if we've been feeding it, oh, things turn out for the worse, then our imagination might leap to the worst possible conclusion more often than not. And we can kind of think of this as kind of at night when we are kids or even as adults, we may see something and be like, what is that thing? But it's like, oh, it was a toy or it was just a pile of clothes. So it's kind of like we don't really, what we see in the daytime appears differently at night. So it's those shadows that play on the wall. And again, that's part of the unknown fear is like, once you tell, oh, it's like a vampire, it's a werewolf, it's nothing big, or I know what it is, there's less fear to it. So it's like when you hear a creepy sound at night and you don't actually know what it is, it's like, what's really going on? Is it an intruder? Is something else going on? But then it's like, oh, it's the wind or the cat making its rounds at night. And so it's important to be aware of how often we tend to fill in the blanks and to just be aware of, do I really need to think that way? And sometimes we do actually have to respond pretty quickly to something, but oftentimes it just takes a second to be like, wait a minute, how did my room look when I turned off the lights? But another thing to be aware of is who tells us to fear. Now, being raised Christian as I was, there was always something about how when an angel showed up, you wanted them to say, do not be afraid. Because if they didn't, then it was not good news for you. But if they showed up and they said, do not be afraid, then it was, okay, things are going to be good as long as I do what they say. So that was kind of the thing to be aware of with angels showing up. But these days, with all the noise that goes on, we actually have a bunch of people who are telling us, oh, you should be afraid of this, or you should be afraid of that. And the thing is, for what reason are they doing that? And now, on one hand, we have people who caution us because they want what's best for us. But that's also what they think is best for us, not what actually might be best for us. So they may be like, oh, don't follow your dreams because you might not be able to provide for yourself or whatever. So they go down that road and try to get us to be scared of taking action or so forth. And sometimes it's because they've been down a road that, and they see how it ends, and they don't want us to go down that same road. And so they're trying to save us time, but they're doing it by being, oh, be scared of this, be scared of this, rather than actually giving their reasons why and starting a dialogue. But we should also be aware that not everyone has the best intentions for us, and that's because they can choose not to. And so some people want us to fear because, again, since we generally often make these decisions based on emotion rather than reason and logic, as much as we like to, most people are doing the emotion based thing. Even though we probably are like, no, I don't do that. Oftentimes, we may actually be doing it, even though we may be doing like, oh, this seems reasonable, and so forth. So we kind of have this thing going on there. So the thing is with fear is that it's easy to control people to get them to think a certain way or to do certain actions. And so oftentimes, even just thinking, wait a minute, why are they actually telling me to do this? What's in it for them? Or does something not add up or sit right here? And it's just like thinking that can kind of be the beginning of being like, okay, there is actually possibly a good reason for me to do this versus I think they're actually trying to get me to do something and maybe I shouldn't actually do it. So it's important to be aware of that. But of course, I'd probably be remiss without talking about the marketing side of fear, which is generally related to FOMO, the fear of missing out. And it's like all those limited sales or event purchases, special edition, whatever, that will only be available on a certain quantity. And that, again, that's basically based in FOMO. If you don't act now, you might miss out on it. And there is clearly a benefit to sales because most people don't want to be missing out or they want to go to the event and so forth. It's kind of, then it's like, oh, all my friends will be there, so I don't want to miss out. And so those all those kinds of things that really play with us and make something more enticing than it might actually be. Like, oh, this deal right here is biggest sale it's been. But Black Friday is right around the corner and you're probably going to put it on sale again. So it's just kind of like stuff to really think about. In that some things are like, they seem like really good right now, but there will actually be more time available than we think. Or like it's the first day of the sales, but the sale is going to be in stock and so forth. It's a digital item, so it will be in stock. Or stuff like that. So we actually have time to make a decision. Or another sale might come around and it might even be better. But we should also be aware that there are opportunities we can miss. And oftentimes that has to do with the fact that we have a time on our life. The clock is ticking, and some opportunities may only be there for a certain time. It's like there are people who regret because they didn't tell their family they loved them before it was too late, and so on and so forth. So we need to also be aware of opportunities we can miss. And because we could also think about it like if we want to go on a certain trip, then we probably want to make sure we're in that time limit to register for that trip rather than being like, oh, the trip's coming up, I should register last day, and oh, wait a minute, I can't sign up anymore. So the thing is to kind of really be aware of what opportunities are there that are time limited rather than what's actually probably going to come around again. And so there can kind of be a benefit to fear in that way. But there's another area of fear where that can kind of have a bit of a benefit, even though you probably want to make the better decision way beforehand. But it's when we're on the precipice or the edge of something. It's like we've just been going about our lives, but then one day we see that the bridge we thought was there was out. And maybe there's been a couple signs back that say, bridges out, bridges out, bridges out. But it's only when we're at the cliff that we're realizing, wait a minute, what am I doing here? How did I get here? And I don't want those consequences. I want to turn back. And it's kind of sad because sometimes it's when we're right at the edge that there isn't a time to turn back, but it's when the fear has kicked in and it's like, oh no, I need to turn back. I need to go around. I need to go back. It's kind of like how we don't really think about our health that much unless the doctor has given us bad news, or we don't think about how a relationship might be struggling until someone says they want to leave. All those kinds of things where we're just going through the motions day by day and just thinking everything's fine, but it's like we don't see the tracks, or we don't really realize that the tracks are happening until we're at the edge and staring at the consequences of our actions. So, in that sense, we should be aware that since we do make those choices as emotional rather than reasonable, a lot of people may actually only make a choice to better themselves when they're face to face with the consequences of their fears. So it's just important to be aware of. And also, in that we can probably use reason and logic to basically take a minute and be like, okay, do I really want to do this thing, or are there things I haven't been seeing? And again, it's like a check in to basically be like, hey, am I operating in fear? Or am I basically just seeing stuff add up? But also to be aware that most people may operate based on fear or the emotions, whatever they're feeling at the time. At least those are kind of my thoughts on this. And if you have a different perspective, you can always share it in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video, you can like and share it so that others may enjoy it as well. And if you want to see more videos like this, you can subscribe to our channel, well, for more. Anyway, I'm Jonah, and you've been watching Lions Mane Media, where we celebrate stories and the lessons you learn from them. Talk to you later, and have a great rest of your day.